Brownfield's commitment to agriculture started nearly 50 years ago in just one state. Since then, we've grown to more than 500 radio stations to become the most listened to farm news radio network across the Midwest.
Vision systems and livestock while studying the management of pigs and
Every day, the nation's largest farm broadcasting team is on the ground, talking to farmers, providing them with the information they need.
While the program is reviewed and the Biden administration will make adjustments throughout.
As a Brownfield partner, you reach more acres and more of your targeted farmers on a local level.
Reporting from Lincoln, Nebraska.
The reality is, even in a digital age, farm radio has remained strong, and in fact, Brownfield has added more than 44% listenership in the last 5 years.
Council for outstanding leadership and commitment. Nicodim has served.
Farmers listen to Brownfield.
Farmers did not have a global pandemic factored into their 2020 cash flow statement.
Brownfield is the most listened to farm radio network.
Your office will pursue trade policies that advance the interests of all Americans.
Brownfield has the largest team of farm broadcasters.
Farmers are already very strong on sustainability practices.
Many of you have heard those words spoken during opening ceremonies of many FFA meetings.
Farmers rely on Brownfield for the news they need.
And bids are non-existent. Asking prices have started to surface around.
And wheat was higher. Paris milling wheat was mostly higher ahead of the U.S. session and U.S. winter wheat.
Says to address the issue of hunger, USDA must work in concert with the Food and Agriculture.
Brownfield, the leader in farm radio.
Well, welcome everyone to the Brownfield Tailgate Talk. I'm Cyndi Young. I will be your host for the next hour. We're so excited to have these farmers join us today to share their insights and honest opinion. That is the only thing that we ask, that they be honest, and if they are uncomfortable answering a question, I said you can have a pass on it. So those are really our only rules here. I would like to introduce to you Dave Carmichael. Dave, you want to wave for everybody? Dave is 56 years old. He lives in Dundas, Illinois, farms in Richland and Jasper counties. He raises corn and soybeans on 3,600 acres. He farms with his son Keith, who represents the 5th generation on Carmichael Farms, LLC. Our next guest is Tim Bardol. Tim is 54 years old from Rippey, Iowa. He farms in Greene County and raises corn and soybeans on 2,500 acres. Tim is also a 5th generation farmer. He farms with his father, his brother, and his son. They have been no-tilling on their farm since 1993. They strip-till their corn and use cover crops. And our final guest hails from Chillicothe, Ohio. Greg Corcoran is 36 years old. He farms in Ross, Pike, and Scioto counties in Ohio. He raises corn, soybeans, popcorn, hay, and beef cattle on 6,000 acres. And Greg is also a 5th generation on the family farm. He farms with his father and 3 uncles. So welcome, gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining us today. I am just going to jump right in with the questions. My first question, first of all, you're operating in an environment unlike anything we have ever seen before. Did you change, Dave, did you change your planting intentions this year because of the increased cost of inputs?
No, I didn't change mine at all. We will stay with the same rotation. I believe in a rotation.
Tim, what about you?
No, we didn't change anything. We were able to buy inputs fairly early, other than the herbicides. We're a little concerned about getting them, but everything's paid for, so nothing was changed.
Greg, any changes in your planting intentions?
We took a look at the markets
there's not, it's actually, we're changing probably the opposite direction of what other people are looking at because of the higher input costs for fertilization, but we're trying to capitalize on some higher cash inputs that we have and go ahead and turn around and looking at maybe changing a few things. It's minor. It's fields here and there that we normally turn around and do corn after corn anyways. And I think we're going to continue with that, but minor changes, same thing that Tim mentioned, maybe a little concern with herbicides, getting them in. But really, I think we're set to go with similar to last year in the rotation.
Okay, so let's take a look at long term. Do you expect to be making any operational changes to reduce the amount of fertilizer or herbicides needed because of this environment that we're in today? Greg?
I think for us, and we've talked about it, is we've kind of been, we put a lot of our nitrogen up front. And so with anhydrous being as high as it is, we need to be flexible. So we need to look at other ways of applying that nitrogen, whether that be, like I said, we need to be flexible. So we've kind of been in that we'll put a lot up front and go with it. But in the end, I think if you're not willing to change because of an input price and you're not able to change, you could really get stuck in that rut. So we are looking at some options moving forward if we need to switch, maybe not so much cost, but the availability. If you can't get it, you got to do something. So we've looked at, we're going to start looking at other options for us to be a little more flexible.
So as you look at some of those other options, alternatives such as litter, manure, regenerative principles, biologicals, biostimulants, what direction are you going there? Do you know yet? What are you looking into?
Yeah, so we've looked into a couple different things. One of the things is, there's if you can backhaul, litter, there's chicken, there's a lot of it in our area. So we're able to maybe backhaul off of something we're hauling up in the area. We can backhaul with it, getting it spread out. That's an option. Capitalizing on the local hog farms, maybe work something out there. Looking at, we've been doing cover crops for about 7 years now. That has helped tremendously with the amount of inputs that we need to put in or we don't need to put. It also helps out with herbicides. So we're continuing to look at options. Like I said, it could go either way for us. And being flexible, I think, in this changing climate has helped with making decisions down the road.
Tim, what about you? Are you looking at any long-term changes in this environment?
Not much. We have 5,000 head finisher. My son and his wife just put up a 5,000 head nursery. The only thing we'd change is kind of where we put the manure. Right now, we put it as close as we can. If the fertilizer prices and availability is like it is today, this fall, we'll definitely spread that around so we can reduce how much fertilizer we have to buy. One thing we're seriously considering doing and been contacted by someone is to put a system on our sprayer where it only sprays weeds with that camera system. It's a little early in the technology for us to be overly comfortable, but I'm also fairly sure we're going to be short of both Liberty and Roundup for later sprays. So if that can save a little herbicide for us, in the end, it might really pay off. As far as nitrogen, my whole life, we've been way on the bottom end of what most people put on. We do split apply with Y drops about just before tassel, which we can adjust that application kind of for the season and potential. So, and we'll continue to do that.
What about you, Dave? Making any operational changes down the road?
I really like what Greg said about flexibility. And if you watch a farmer will adapt. We have to adapt, and we're adapting right now. My father, he would put on one application of nitrogen, and I don't know, 50 years ago or whatever, and that was it. But we wouldn't think of anything less than 3 today, and I assume it will continue to go that way. I'm fighting it right now, but my son wants to put it on with the planter, and because I know it's a lot of work to do so, but I think we have to adapt and we have to go with the situation.
Okay, so I'm going to ask all three of you to answer this question. Where do you go to get recommendations for your inputs? And I'm talking about seed, fertilizer, herbicides, pesticides, fungicides. Where do you go, Dave?
I think you have to do business with people you trust, and you have to find really, the price is something people will talk about, but the consulting that goes along with these inputs is huge. And we use these people, and anywhere where we could grab information, again, a farmer will grab it and use it. And we get a lot of information. And then we also hire consultants nowadays. We have, marketing consultants, input consultants, all kinds of things that we didn't used to have.
Tim, what about you?
Yeah, I agree with Dave. If you're going to deal with somebody, you need to trust them. And, that's a big part of where, we buy herbicides. At some point, price is a factor, but it's the service and trust is really the most important.
Greg, do you agree? Do you have anything else to add to that?
I think the way we've done it for a while now, we've kind of come in a collaboration with our farmers and larger farmers in Ohio. We formed a group in which we come together to buy inputs, and what that has done for us is we get a lot of recommendations from a lot of different companies. They're coming in, they're asking, they're trying to obviously looking for group buys, bulk buys, but in the end, it's that relationship. So not only within our organization that we formed, we're sharing that information within us to show what's working, what's not working. Everybody has their own options to do their own things. And, not everybody's going to agree on seed or even herbicides. But what that allows us to do is to share that information across the board. And with that collaboration, you get results. And so, hey, this wasn't working for me this year, or, hey, we just tried this. It was fantastic. Hopefully it's available next year. So we're sharing that information within this organization that we've kind of formed, and it's been fantastic for us, and that helps make some of the decisions. And again, when it comes down to your dealers, you got to be able to trust them. You can't, it only takes one time for you to have something happen to where you would look somewhere else. And so that relationship is built, and it's simple things that somebody comes out, if they're going to come out and throw some money down for your kids' 4-H rabbit or whatever, that goes a long way in this organization. When you show that it's more than just one person, it's a community, and you're trying to build that, and they're involved in the community, I think that means a lot. So those are some of the things that what we do and that we're working at.
Greg, do you ever push a retailer to carry a fungicide, a herbicide, and an insecticide that they don't currently carry?
I think at times, it's always worth asking if you're looking for something specific, and whether they carry it or not. As far as pushing, I think that term can be construed in different ways, but for us, it's more of, you say, hey, we're looking for this. Can you supply this? Is that available? Have you looked into this? I think it comes down to those kind of questions, and it depends on the dealer, depends on the supplier. And whether you get those results that you're looking for. A lot of times, suppliers can be really set in what they're supplying. But if you can get them to look in other ways, other means, I think it helps. But it just depends on who you're dealing with.
Okay, Tim, when you look for information on fungicides, what's more important, trial data or farmer testimonial?
Trial data to a large degree. I'm a director on the Iowa Soybean Association, And the Iowa Soybean Association does a lot of field trials, strip trials at whole field sizes, not just plots. And those are the numbers when we're questioning something that we'll kind of lean towards, because it isn't big, or it's a larger area, and it's somebody that really doesn't have an axe to grind. They're just wanting to find out what works and what doesn't. So that's pretty much where we lean.
Okay. Dave, when you're looking at trying a new product for your farm, what is the top consideration? What do you take into consideration primarily in that decision?
Well, is it going to be economical to use? Be real high on the list. And, the big thing now, as farmers always talk about, is everything gains us 3 and 5 and 10 bushel of the acre. If we had all those, we'd have unbelievable numbers. But will it gain us yield for the price that we pay for it?
Are you concerned about weed and insect resistance to certain control methods on your farm today? And are you seeing, Dave, and are you seeing resistance issues?
We're definitely seeing weed resistance, and our other two farmers will be laughing at that because we've seen it for years with water hemp and such. But yes, it's a concern. We need different modes of action, and we need to keep worrying about that for sure. Yes.
So what are you doing? How are you managing that? Because obviously it is a problem.
Well, the neat thing about it is, to me, is we don't just have Roundup Ready beans anymore. We have a lot of different modes of action, and we can move things around quite a bit. And I think that's huge down the road.
Tim, how are you managing resistance?
Really, ever since Liberty came out, we've been using Liberty on our beans and Roundup on our corn. So no field had really, other than burn down, we use Roundup, but no field had Roundup 2 years in a row or Liberty. That being said, we still have some resistant weeds, but I think it really has helped reduce them for us.
Greg, resistance issues on your farm, how are you managing that?
Diversification and rotation, as Tim was talking about. It's important to us to keep the rotating, what herbicides we're using for the fields that we're using, identifying problems, and then trying to attack that the following year. Big is when it comes to with weeds, is that cover crops has been solving a lot of problems for us. It's been something that we've been doing for a couple of years now, and we're seeing the results. The results are we're not seeing as much weed pressure. If you don't have as much weed pressure, you don't have as much resistant weeds. So for us, it's we're seeing something there, and we think there's a lot to be gained in it, and so we're going to continue to try to do that across all our fields. And so that's something that we're doing. And like I said, it's keeping that rotating, identifying that problem as early as you can. Timely spraying is huge. So all those factors come in, and that's kind of how we're managing. And it's not that we don't have that. We don't have concerns. We still have issues, but it's how we're trying to manage it.
Dave, Tim, cover crops on your farms?
Yeah, we've been doing cover crops for 6 or 7 years. We have a seeder that's on our Hagee that shoots the seed between every row and meters it out. So it works really well. Good even stands, and like Greg was saying, it does really help with weed pressure. And there's only been 1 or 2 times that it kind of stung us a bit when it's really dry in the spring, but for the most part, we're very, very happy with cover crops, and I think they're doing exactly what they're supposed to be doing as far as nutrient scavenging and being there later for the crop.
Okay, Dave, I'm going to change the subject here. I want to talk about equipment. How do you currently plan your equipment purchase cycles? Do you just run it until it's time to get something new? Do you have a rotation plan? How do you manage that?
You do have some sort of a plan. I'm going to run a tractor for so long. And some people feel more comfortable with used equipment than I do because I'm not the most mechanical person in the world. But we like to buy, and we don't buy brand new things anymore. It's gotten too expensive, but 1 and 2 year old pieces of equipment. But it's kind of comes down to when you can get good value out of your used equipment, and when you get good value, when you think you get a good deal on the what also is used equipment that you're buying, slightly used equipment.
Tim, what about you with your equipment? Do you have a rotation plan in place?
You always have a plan that you want to trade before your stuff isn't worth anything. But really, the way ever since I've been farming, we pretty much run a piece of equipment until we just can't depend on it and can't keep it fixed up, and then trade. This year was a very profitable year. If there would be more availability and not the extra high prices, we would probably try to upgrade more than we're going to be able to do. But there's just too many rough years. I'm just a little in the western half of Iowa, and rains and dry just seem to sting us about every third year. So it's not quite as consistent here as it is really east of the Mississippi as far as rainfall and the yields you can count on.
So I'm going to jump and talk a little bit about this supply chain, the issues that we have seen with that. Greg, what pressures are you facing or have you faced with availability for either crop inputs, equipment, parts and services for equipment? What are you seeing, and what about price increases due to that?
You just want me to say yes to all those you just asked, or yes? So for sure on all those, equipment availability, inputs availability, prices going through the roof. It's an eye opener when you look at it, especially for me, being a younger farmer and seeing some of these prices that sometimes don't make sense. So I'm sitting here and looking at, can I even get all the nitrogen that I need this year? Can I even get the Roundup that I need this year? We pre-buy or we prepay, doesn't mean you're going to get it. So there is some concerns there of the what if and what are you going to do? And it is supply chain. I mean, you talk down through everything. I mean, I'm a cattle. I mean, it comes down to, I can't even get dates for my fats that are in to take them into the butcher shops. The butcher shops are back because they're not getting help. We're behind schedule on about everything because we can't get help because there's nobody available to hire. So it's a bigger scope than just individual things. But for us, we're all fronts: equipment, inputs, labor. All those are a huge concern going into this year.
So have these issues, these supply chain issues, caused you to move away from some of the suppliers that you've had in the past to seek out new ones, or is that a solution?
I think it's more of on a across the board scale. It's at this point, it's who's got it. Mm-hmm. And I don't care who it is because I need it. I mean, that's where we're at. I know there's loyalties and everything, but if they don't have it, you can't. There's nothing, you need it. And so you're calling whoever you can to see if you can get what you need in. And so that's where we're at. You know what you need to get through the year. You know what you need in order to grow that crop. It's the reality that we're in. And you know, yes, you have loyalties to the suppliers you've been with, but if they don't have it, you got to go somewhere else.
Dave, Tim, I'm sure you're experiencing some of the same things. Dave?
Yes, I won't tell you about the piece of equipment that I ordered in August and haven't got it yet. And here I'm needing to use it in a week or two, and that makes you nervous. But I'll just tell you the story of a tire, a 15-second story. And it was an implement tire that we needed to have a spare around. And Greg said it so well, it's just where we can find it. And it really don't matter what it cost. We needed it. And I finally found it and I bought it. And it was like $400 higher than I was used to paying. But that's what we're dealing with.
Tim, what is your biggest supply chain concern going into this growing season?
This growing season, it's definitely herbicides, and also parts for equipment breakdowns. Even last fall, we struggled getting repairs and parts for the combine. It got so it wasn't, do they have it in the storeroom? It's looking around the lot and see if they have something sitting there you can steal it off of. And it's only got worse, I think. So that's why I'm very concerned. But the herbicide, especially we're no-till, we're not going to till, period. We have to have something to spray on the crop to protect it from the weeds and insects.
Now, you all have said that relationships with your local suppliers or dealers are important, that it is a community, a trust. How brand loyal are you? Greg?
People could look at us and say, well, obviously that's all you do is John Deere. Well, the way they work is once you get into the technology and once you become so integrated in the systems, it's hard to break away from that. So yes, we're probably brand loyal, but it's more of that thought that what it would take with all that data, with all that software and everything that we're used to and what we've been operating for years, to change to a different system would be challenging. And it's not in the past, this is even before I came back to the farm, that we did switch and we went to a different brand. And maybe it didn't go as well as we wanted it to, but it's integrated into the systems. And once you kind of get into that system, get used to that software, it's hard to change. It is for us. And data is huge in this industry right now, and we have it. We might not utilize it as best as we can, but it's important to us, and we need to be able to keep that data, whether it moves from one brand to another. And so that's kind of my 2 cents on the brand.
Okay. Tim, we're talking about data, technology. Digital is a big part of agriculture and farming today. Lots of talk about technology solutions in agriculture, autonomous tractors, robots to pull weeds, blue lights that kill weed seed and chaff. How do you see the technology developments in agriculture changing the way that you run your farming operation, and have digital solutions provided some opportunities for you?
We're definitely always open to new technology. My grandfather back in the early 40s was one of the first around with the tractor. He was the first around with the combine in the late 50s, early 60s. So technology is always something you have to look at. When we look at something, it's all return on investment. Is it gonna make things easier or safer for us as operators? Is it going to be better for the land, which we depend on for a living? So those are the things that we look at, and there's no question. Even since I've been farming, it has changed so much. My grandfather started with horses, and before he passed away, he was driving a tractor with auto steer. So agriculture is definitely one of those industries that may have went thousands of years without changing, but in the last 100 years, you can hardly recognize it today from what it was. So if you're going to survive and be competitive in the world, which as a farmer you are competing within the world, not just your neighbors or within the U.S., you have to embrace any advantage you can find and anything to make it better, quicker, and more profitable.
Dave, I want to ask you about your thoughts on carbon programs. Where do you start? What do you see as the risk associated with joining a carbon program right now, or the risk of not joining a carbon program right now?
That's an interesting question. I haven't really gave a lot of thought to that, but I think that it's something that is coming, and we need again to adapt to it. And if need be, we need to go into these programs.
Greg, Tim, are either one of you participating in a carbon program today?
We a couple of years ago did, but our problem is we've been no-till since '93. We do cover crop. You know, we do all the things that they want you to change to get carbon credits that they can sell. My argument is, so you want me to go out and run a disc over all my acres, so then I can go back to my normal, what I do, and then all of a sudden, you know, I'd be eligible to get the carbon credits and make money off it, and nobody has much of an answer. And that is one thing that as a farmer, and what I've been hearing from my Iowa soybean, and I'm also on USB. You know, it's kind of one of them black boxes that nobody really has a definition for, as far as, you know, what these companies want to make themselves green, even though agriculture has been getting greener and greener for years. And actually is one thing we talked about in Washington, D.C. here first of the week with some of the representatives. If this is going to be a thing, somebody's got to have real definition to, you know, what carbon sequestration really does, what it's worth, because if there isn't something out there, the farmer's going to lose. Somebody's going to make a lot of money. Farmers are going to make more efforts and do more, which isn't bad. But in my opinion, if the farmer does the work, the farmer deserves the reward. So that's my thought.
Greg, you're shaking your head yes. In agreement on this?
I agree with everything Tim said. I mean, we've been doing cover crops for 7 years. We've been doing carbon sequestration. You want to talk about carbon neutral. I mean, that's what we've been doing. And we continue to find ways to help the environment, help the land. And, you know, you sit here and you look at companies that are looking to capitalize on that and willing to pay you for that. But we've been doing this. And what does that define? What does that mean? And who benefits? And, you know, for us as an organization in our farm, yeah, if we can make money off of it, that sounds great, but is it for the right reasons? We looked at 2 different programs this year and didn't sign up for either one, because there's too much ambiguity in it. you sit here and you say, I want it clear to define. I want it to fully understand what we're trying to do here. And it's almost like there's no goal. There's no, for either side. It's just, let's mitigate something. We don't know what it is, but we want to mitigate it. So I think as farmers, we sit here and we're just kind of saying, yeah, we're doing it. Let's find out what we're doing and work together.
So, Greg, where do you go for advice with your farming operation? Who do you go to? Is it an individual? Is it an entity? Where do you go for advice?
There's not one person. There's not one organization. Farm Bureau plays a big part in what I've been involved with, and that's just something I've gone to. And when you go to organizations like that, you meet like-minded people. And so that's kind of where I get some input in talking to people. Our organization, we rely heavily on, our farm relies heavily on, like I said, the conglomerate that we formed. And we get a lot of information back from there. That's kind of the things that we go off of. Me personally, like I said, I'm still in that learning curve, and I think I'll always be learning. I rely a lot on I'm in business with my father and three of my uncles, and there's a wealth of information that I tap into there. Different organizations that have your best interest in mind. Ohio Cattlemen's is another one I go to, or these land grants, Ohio State, or different ones that are doing the research. There's just so much you can tap into, and you sit down, you read, magazines, you watch the news, you're following everything. So, you form your own opinions and what you think is what your farm should do. But in the end, you're taking advice from other people. And sometimes you actually look across the fence and see what your neighbor doing and talk to them and say, hey, that looked really good. How'd you do that? And there's some communication there.
Absolutely. Dave, where do you go to get your advice?
Multiple sources, like Greg said, farm magazines and Brownfield news and sources like that. But also we've hired, like I said earlier, marketing consultants. And I have a wheat consultant, a corn and soybeans. And some people, I think, are afraid to look to other people for advice, but I think that it's even biblical to look for wisdom from. And I really liked what Greg said too, the older people in my farm. I just lost my father this past year, and boy, did I use him for advice on the farm, and people like him.
Dave, you mentioned wheat. You had a little story for me before we came online here. Would you share that with our audience?
Well, the wheat is booming right now on the Board of Trade, and I'm not sure what it's done in the last hour, but it's going up so fast it's hard to even sell wheat right now. I've never seen that in my career. So again, you turn to your marketing experts that we just talked about, and sometimes I would hate to go solo on some of these things, but it's hard to know what to do.
Okay, I mentioned in your introductions, we've got three farmers, one from Illinois, one from Iowa, one from Ohio. We mentioned the fifth generation. Greg, what's your favorite thing about farming, and why did you decide to continue with the family's legacy?
I grew up with it. So I was born, raised on the farm. I remember leaving for college, and I swore I would never come back. I didn't want anything to do with it. Went to college for a couple of years, had that urge to come back. Came back and asked if I could join the farm. They said, nope, go find something else. So I was actually in the construction industry for about 7 years, building schools. And the same thing, I always, the memories that I had. So I started a family. I had two girls at that time, and I was living just outside the city. I said, this is not the life that I remember. I want to get back to the farm. I want those experiences for my children, 4-H, FFA, all those things. So that kind of drove me to come back. There was an opportunity to come back, and I did join the family operation. And now there's a lot of pride in what we have and being that next generation. I'm the first one of my generation to come back, and so far it looks like might be the only one. But I look at a legacy now. I'm looking to pass that on to my kids. And so that's my biggest driver, is I'm sitting there saying, I want a future for them in this operation because I love it. I love waking up, working with my hands every day. I love being outside, accomplishing, turning around and say, look, I did that today. I did that today. You know, you get a lot of pride in what you do. So I think that's what drives me day in and day out, is for my family, for something for them for the future, the legacy that's being passed down that I want to continue. And that, like I said, something for the future for my kids.
Tim, continuing that legacy is very important and from the heart and all of the right things. But in this environment, it is challenging to do, isn't it? And how do you move that forward and sleep at night sometimes?
Sometimes don't sleep at night. It's tough. When we brought my son Skylar back to the farm 4 or 5 years ago, right in time for flooding, and actually there's 4 years really tough weather-wise, between flooding, losing all our ponds, and dry. That's one reason we built the finisher here about 2.5 years ago, just to try to bring something, just another revenue stream other than row crop and the custom work we do. And the banker thought that was a fantastic idea. And Skylar wanted to do a nursery for the same integrator that we use. And the banker thought that was a fantastic idea. So now we have 3.5, I guess, people working between my brother and son, and Dad keeps trying to back off a bit, but we seem to keep him full-time busy. But it's not easy. Agriculture, like this year, we have a good year. I had somebody ask me, and this was late last summer, boy, it looks like these prices are going up. Everything's going to look pretty good. So what do you think next year is going to be like? And I said, you get one good year out of every 7 or 10. And that one good year, you better do everything right and put money back, because the following year, the inputs, everything are going to go up and match where the prices, grain prices, livestock, whatever prices are. So that next year, even though you have high prices, you're still going to be on either side of break even, trying to survive. So that's kind of what it is. For a 29-year-old like my son is, he has a little difficulty dealing with it day in and day out. He has 2 kids, and it's one of those deals that as you get older, you just kind of let things run off your back and know that, today may be really good, tomorrow probably won't be, or vice versa. So I'm just thrilled that he wanted to come back. He's the 6th generation. Where I live, where he grew up, is the farm my great-great-grandfather bought in 1901, and my grandfather was born just about 20 yards from where our house is. So, and that is something that is very important to me, and I'm just thrilled it's just as important to my son.
Dave, as you look at your farm and your farming legacy, what do you have to be optimistic about looking into the next year, the next 5 years? There has to be something positive or you wouldn't be there.
Well, you need to be optimistic. And going into this year, about Thanksgiving time or something like that, I did my budget. And I'm thinking, oh my goodness, I don't have a high enough APH combined with $5 corn, and lo and behold, we're at $6 corn for next year already. So things have their way of working out. You don't worry so much about it, and you stay optimistic, or else we wouldn't make it as farmers, because sometimes it looks kind of bleak, and we just keep going.
One of the questions that, and we do have the chat box open for questions if people would like to submit things. One of the questions, and you mentioned this earlier, Greg, labor issues. Are you seeing any issues along those lines, as in not being able to get the labor you need when you need it?
Yes. We've been struggling with labor for probably a couple of years now. Not only with hiring, but retaining. And we've had a lot of turnover. And as the wage rate has continued to climb dramatically over the last couple of years, we've struggled to keep employees. We have some long-term employees, but we're running like a 3-year backlog of projects that we wanted to complete. We just haven't been able to get to. So we've actually, I just did it the other day. I have signed up for H2A, and that's where I'm at this point, is that I cannot hire locally. The help that I need to get through a growing season, spring, summer, fall harvest, all that. I need bodies, and we're short bodies and we can't do it. And so I've turned to H2A program in order to fill that void. I'd be happy to hire locally, but we struggle. We've been struggling for a while. We've had ads out. We've done interviews. Out of probably 15 to 20 employees, people that apply for the job, I might maybe see 3 that actually call me back, and then maybe 1 that will actually show up for an interview. And if that person stays more than a day, it doesn't happen. So it's a trying time for us in the labor force. So that's what we've been struggling with. We've raised our wage rate up to highest rate ever, and we're competitive with those manufacturing businesses that are all around us. And so it's a tough environment when you can't get the help, no matter how you change.
We are getting some questions from those in our audience they're asking some questions about media usage and some topics along those lines. We established, I'm going to be completely upfront, we established before these panelists joined us, these farmers joined us, that they are familiar with Brownfield. They listen to Brownfield on the radio. So just, want to put that out there so everyone knows that. One of the questions that we did get, do you regularly listen to podcasts? And if yes, what sort of podcasts do you listen to? Are they all ag, or are they murder mystery or something else? Tim?
I don't usually. The only time I listen to podcasts are when I'm on an airplane and download stuff, and it's usually history type things, just stuff I don't have time to read or look at at home, and it interests me.
Dave, are there any ag products, just across the board, any ag products that have advertising that really gets your attention?
That's a good question.
And if you want to
you
think about it
stunned me.
a minute, if you want to think about it a minute, I'll ask Greg, is there something out there, whether it's a crop input or equipment or anything along those lines, that maybe it's the branding, the tagline, whatever it might be, that really gets your attention?
I always find it interesting, and people always talk about this. You just say, man, we need to look at getting this or that, and it somehow shows up on a Facebook feed or on your Google search. It's almost uncanny. And so it's kind of along those lines. When you're looking for something, replacement or something new within our operation, those things catch your eye. So you notice them more quickly. So it's my mind kind of works in that way where if it's something I'm looking for, I'm a lot more attentive to anything that has to do with that kind of advertising. So whether it be on the radio, whether it be magazines, certain things that stick out, and even mailings, I typically sift through the mail pretty fast, but something every once in a while will catch my eye. And I'll a lot of times it'll just be a postcard. And that is really all I need, because whether I'm interested or not, I'm going to, I've tossed magazines after magazines of products because I know I'm not looking for that or not looking for that right now. But if there's something I'm looking for, and if it's just a simple postcard, I'm going to look into it. It does kind of catch my eye where I'll get it and I'll say, hi, I haven't heard that one before. That's something new. I'll take 5 minutes and look it up on my phone. So I don't need all the information sent to me, because if I'm interested, I'll look it up. But if I'm not, it's going in the bin.
Okay, so Tim, if you hear something on the radio that catches your attention, or you see something online or in a magazine or on a billboard, wherever it might be, that catches your attention, that you're interested in, what's your next step in learning more about that product or service? How do you research it?
Well, it depends what it is. I would look for the website and see what it says about it. If it would be like a herbicide or some sort of crop protection product, I would talk to my agronomist and just see what they know about it. So, I take all advertisements kind of with a grain of salt. If it piques my interest, I'll look into it further and try to find somebody I trust that knows more about it.
Dave, what do you do? How do you research?
Well,
or what's your next step?
The internet nowadays is huge. And I was thinking, you asked me a question earlier and kind of stunned me, but these YouTube videos we all watch nowadays about farmers, and that's a huge place for people to advertise, and it catches my attention. And then before I know it, I'm on the internet researching it. So, yeah, I mean, YouTube is becoming huge, obviously.
Dave, how do you refer to yourself? Do you refer to yourself as a farmer, a producer, a grower? Who is Dave Carmichael?
A grain farmer.
A grain farmer. Tim, what about you? How do you refer to yourself?
Around home, a farmer. In other areas, producer probably.
Greg?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. It depends on my audience. If it's people that have very little knowledge of the farm, you just got to kind of depend on your audience. I'll say I'm a farmer. People can relate that, they understand that. But one end, smaller groups is producer, cattle grain producer. Different terminology. It just depends on the audience that you're going for.
But you're not offended if somebody calls you something other than a farmer.
It depends on what they say.
Well, I mean grower, operator.
I've been called a couple of things, but that depends on what it is.
Okay, I'm sifting through these questions real quickly that we're getting in. Dave, do you use any generic inputs on your farm?
Used to be no, but now yes, definitely. And again, it comes down to more, can I get it, than what it is. Yeah, yes.
Okay. Second question, do you buy any inputs online?
Yes, I have some inputs now. You have to pay up front, and I haven't got them yet, about 2 months later. So it's kind of scary to me. They've got my money, but yes, I do. And it's kind of a new experience for me also.
Tim, how about you? Are you buying any inputs online?
No, only parts, but not inputs.
Greg?
Same. We haven't done any inputs online, but parts is definitely something that we've been more apt to buy, either generic, off-brand, researching this company, whoever has it at this point. But price does pay. And if, anything can be shipped. And I think it makes the world a little more unique. And you can buy something from California if it's cheaper, if it's the price overall is cheaper. So I think it comes down to what the price point and availability.
Okay, Dave, has fungicide become an assumed input on your farm, or is fungicide just used as needed?
I would say it's assumed nowadays, and I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but the yields that we feel like we're getting out of them, and we even purchased a piece of equipment to go over tasseled corn so we could apply it ourselves. And yes, it is an assumed practice.
Tim, same for you, or?
In corn, we do it because it pays. Soybean, sometimes we do, sometimes we don't, kind of by scouting and deciding what to do. But corn, it doesn't matter. It pays.
Greg?
What was the question? Sorry.
Are fungicides assumed or as needed on your farm?
Corn's a must, has to be done. Especially for our popcorn, it's susceptible on the stalk. So we definitely do that. We do aerial applications of all our corn every year. Soybeans, it's an as needed. Typically, it's most or all is done. It depends on where we're at within our application. If we can incorporate it in with something else, or if it's expensive, I think that's what comes down to, especially on beans. So if we don't think they're going to yield, we're not going to put any more into those beans. And we've made that decision late where we've not done it just because we know they're not going to come through. So it's just not worth putting that extra cost into it.
Tim, do you use, or what type of, I should say, retail programs, if any, influence your input decisions in a perfect world where you can get any input that you want easily and there aren't supply chain issues? For example, rebates or 0% financing, things along those lines. Are those of interest to you? Do they catch your eye?
Yeah, they probably catch my eye. It's always nice if what I want to use has something like that. But when we decide which herbicides we're going to use, we're gonna stick with that unless we can't get it, because we try to rotate. We're not going to do something over and over just because there's a rebate or whatever.
Okay. Do either Dave or Greg, do you have a different opinion on that? Pretty much the same. Okay. Dave, where do you go online to look for advice or solutions? So you mentioned the internet. If you are looking for something, where do you go? How do you do that?
Well, I go to Google and Google whatever it is I'm looking for.
Okay.
To be honest, but wow, what a tool we have with the internet to be able to go and research. And I don't know if all the information I'm seeing is correct or not, but I can see a lot of information about whatever I want to see it about.
So I want to jump ahead because we just have 3 minutes here. As you look forward, what is a new factor in your decision-making process that you might not have included a couple of years ago, Greg?
Is it available? There used to be a lot of availability. You can be competitive on your prices. Now it's who can provide that service and actually come through. So I never thought that the supply chain would be as fragile as it was, or as it is, as it could be. When you come down to, I never thought, I'd stand and look at a dealership, whether that be truck or car dealerships or John Deere dealerships or any of them, and look at their lot and it's empty. I never thought I'd see that day. But and it's just surprising to say, are we now on the point of settling for whatever we can get? I hope that's not the case. Or is it now just, if you want something, you need to order it, and you may or may not get it in the timely fashion that you need. So that, I think, availability of services is something that we now have to take a very high look at. That 2 years ago, 3 years ago, that's not something that would have been a problem.
Tim, how about you? What do you, how are you making decisions differently, or factors that you're looking at that you didn't look at a couple of years ago?
Very similar to Greg. We'll have parts on hand when we go to the dealership and pick some stuff up. We look in the future, and the next month or two, especially coming into planting, and something that normally, if we broke down, we just go pick it up. If they have it, we buy it, and buy more than one. And I think a lot of people are doing that. Actually, before my son came back to the farm, he was parts manager at our local dealership, and he's the one that got saying, there's no reason not to have it on our shelf, because you can't depend on it being there. So that's definitely one thing that we're doing different. As far as the herbicides, you just don't know. You won't know until it's too late is the problem. So that's very stressful. And like Greg said, who would ever have thought in the United States, here in the heart of the Corn Belt, that you would be struggling to get inputs, get parts, be able to even buy a tractor. If you had the money to write a check for it, it's not there. So it's just amazing times we're living in, and about time you think you've seen it all, there's something else hit you. So
it's a new and different environment in agriculture today, in the world today. I have a ton of questions that we did not get answered, and my apologies to those who submitted them. There's only so much time, and I think many of you would have liked to listen to these farmers for the rest of the afternoon, but I also know that they have some work to do. So I want to thank everyone for joining us today. A very special thank you to Dave and Greg and Tim for sharing your knowledge and your experiences today. Wish you all a safe and prosperous growing season. And again, thanks to all of those who in the audience for attending. On behalf of Brownfield, I'm Cyndi Young.